exactly the opposite.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After 8 long years of this Liberal government's economic mismanagement, Canadians are paying the price. The reckless government spending coupled with their love of taxes has caused this inflation crisis. Their failed policies have left this country with 40-year highs in inflation, interest rates not seen since the 2008 recession, and continually rising taxes that seem to end up in the hands of wealthy Liberal insiders or sent out the door in inflationary spending. Worst of all, the government is going to triple the destructive carbon tax and add a second one on top of that. Shame. Madam Speaker, the reckless spending by this government started even before the COVID-19 pandemic. The government, the Prime Minister spent $10 billion, his promise of $10 billion was broken when, even before the pandemic, he had already spent $100 billion. And after telling Canadians that he would only have modest deficits, he broke completely through that. Of course, during COVID, this government kept the money printers going, adding $500 billion to the national debt. 40% of that spending wasn't even pandemic related. Former Finance Minister and random Liberal Bill Morneau has admitted that this government overspent during the pandemic. Lucrative government contracts have gone to companies like SNC-Lavalin, the We Charity, and the company run by former Liberal MP Frank Baylis. And of course, Canadians got nothing out of those contracts in all those cases. But this Prime Minister's friends were happily paid off, and it cost Canadians. The Auditor General has even reported $32 billion went to people who shouldn't have gotten COVID benefits, including prisoners and dead people, and even foreign nationals. And it seems this Prime Minister ranks Canadians lower than even criminals. And who can forget the $54 million spent on the ArriveCan app that failed to do anything but wrongly send vaccinated Canadians into government-run quarantine centres? What's worse is these Liberals thought, why not add $15 billion a year in spending on contracts that go out to high-priced consultants who have personal connections to cabinet ministers and even the Prime Minister? And as the parliamentary budget officer once said, this is not keeping one's powder dry. Madam Speaker, the Bank of Canada's Governor, Tiff Macklem, has said that inflation is a homegrown issue. He admitted to the Finance Committee that this Liberal government's out-of-control spending drove up inflation that plagues Canadians today. He's even indicated that the 8 consecutive interest rate hikes were necessary because these Liberals can't help but spend. The former Bank of Canada Governor and future Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney told senators that inflation is a domestic problem. And former Liberal Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister John Manley has said that the Liberal spending is working against the efforts of the Bank of Canada to control inflation. He added that Liberal spending is fueling inflation. Inflation has also been fueled by this Liberal government's adding tax increases after tax increases. There's the tripling of the carbon tax. The new second carbon tax is coming this year, the payroll tax, and the undemocratic escalator tax on the drinks Canadians enjoy. When asked by Conservatives, the Bank of Canada Governor admitted that the failed carbon tax is driving up inflation. It's not hard to see why. While inflation caused by Liberal spending has made everything more expensive, the Liberals' carbon tax is punishing Canadians, businesses, and farmers for living their lives. Agriculture producers are dealing with higher prices for farm fuels, fertilizers needed to grow crops, and the feed they keep to keep livestock alive. We know that once tripled, the failed carbon tax will cost a typical farmer $150,000 a year. The agriculture industry could lose upwards of $50 million on fertilizer emission costs. And the price of natural gas will jump as the tripling carbon tax adds about 30 cents per litre. Businesses are taking on the higher costs of buying goods, paying for transportation, and paying for more refrigeration and storage. But if farmers and businesses want to survive in this Prime Minister's Canada, they have to raise their prices. At the end of the day, they still need to pay their employees, pay the rent, and pay for Liberal tax increases. When producers making the goods are forced to pay more, it costs more for businesses to buy, transport, and store goods. So it's not rocket science to see it costs Canadians more to pay for the gas, groceries, and home heating they need to survive in Canada. Madam Speaker, it is that cost of living that is the issue. 1 in 5 Canadians are out of money. They're skipping meals or accessing charity services just to meet their basic needs. 60% of Canadians are cutting back on groceries, while 41% are looking for cheaper, less nutritious options. The average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment across Canada's 10 big cities is over $2,000 a month compared to $1,171 a month in 2015. That's an almost 90% increase in rent. The average homeowner's mortgage payments have more than doubled since 2015, going from about $1,500 to more than $3,000 a month. Inflation on the interest on mortgages is up 18% year over year. It takes 60 to 70% of Canadians' paychecks to pay the mortgage, while inflation and the cost of living eat up the rest. And as we see skyrocketing home heating prices due to the Liberal government cancelling good, clean energy projects that could have been made here in Canada, we also see that the carbon tax takes up about 18 to 20% of everyday Canadians' home heating bill. When they triple the carbon tax, that will take anywhere from 40 to 60% of the bill alone just on carbon tax. 80% of variable rate mortgages have now hit the point where their mortgage payment is entirely just interest, and the bank has forced them to pay more to pay down the principal part of the mortgage. 45% of those homeowners on variable rate mortgage will have to sell their homes in 9 months. If you're living in one of the hot housing markets like in Ontario, you could lose 30% on the sale of your house if you bought it in the last 12 months. Madam Speaker, this carbon tax is a complete failure. It has failed to reach the Liberal emissions targets. In fact, Canada ranks 58th out of 63 countries in climate change performance. We rank lower than China and the US and just barely perform better than Russia. It is clear the Liberal carbon tax is not an environmental plan, it's a tax plan. If Canada is to succeed on the environment and in our economy, government needs to get out of the way and let businesses, incentivize businesses and let them thrive. For decades, the private sector has been the innovators and developers of the technology that drives our economy forward. The right approach to addressing climate change is through technology and innovation, not tax. Yet, Liberals have crushed the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit and have even driven away investment. Since 2015, Canada has only seen a decline in investors wanting to bring their money to invest in our world-class businesses and industries, and because of uncertainty has caused this out-of-control Liberal spending, inflation, and taxation. We need to restore affordability and confidence to the Canadian economy. To do that, government is not and will not be the solution. Instead, it's time to fire the gatekeepers, cut the red tape, and end the punishing tax burden on Canadians. Canadian workers and businesses are ready to get this economy back on track, restore good paychecks for our workers, and reverse the damage caused by this Liberal government. On this side, we know that the only way out of this affordability crisis is to stop the crazy government spending and instead make more of what money buys: affordable homes, affordable Canadian food, and affordable, responsibly sourced Canadian energy. At a time of crisis for Canadians, Conservatives and our Conservative leader are listening and ready to act. Canadians are ready too, but they need to get this government out of the way. It's time to end the inflationary spending spree, end the cushy Liberal contracts, and stop the tax increases. It's time to axe this failed carbon tax and let Canadians keep more in their pockets. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments.